Grayson Scott didn't expect his Tuesday morning to start with a broken sink and a wide-eyed 6-year-old announcing, "Daddy, the kitchen's drowning." He dropped the wrench he'd been using on their stubborn heater and rushed to the kitchen to find water spilling out from under the sink like it was trying to escape the house. Kneeling down beside the cabinet, he twisted the shut-off valve with practiced hands, the old pipes groaning in protest. Kylie, his daughter, stood beside him in her mismatched socks, holding tightly to her stuffed bunny. "We can't afford a plumber, right?" Grayson gave her a tight smile. "Nope, but lucky for us, your dad used to fix rich people's sinks for a living." Kylie grinned. "You're like a superhero." "Don't tell anyone. It's a secret identity," he whispered, tapping her nose with his wet finger. After drying the mess, he packed his old rusty toolbox and kissed Kylie on the forehead. "Stay with Miss Lillian next door, okay? Have a job to get to." His job wasn't glamorous. He worked part-time at a hardware store and took odd handyman gigs wherever he could find them. Between that and Kylie's school lunches and rent for their tiny 2-bedroom apartment, there wasn't much left. He was just getting to his beat-up pickup when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Grayson speaking." A clipped, professional voice answered. "Hi, my name is Rachel from Northbridge Properties. Our building manager recommended you for a quick plumbing fix. It's urgent. Are you available right now?" "I can be there in 20 minutes, he said. He didn't ask questions. Half the time, the jobs were in half-finished apartments or storage units. He drove across the bridge into the nicer part of the city and pulled up to a sleek high-rise that looked like it belonged in a movie. The concierge eyed him suspiciously until a woman in a sharp navy suit appeared. "You must be Mr. Scott." He nodded. She handed him a keycard. "Penthouse, elevators private." "Penthouse?" He blinked but didn't say anything. Maybe it was a corporate suite or something. When the elevator doors slid open, he stepped into a condo so clean and modern it didn't even look like people actually lived there. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble countertops, gold fixtures. Grayson whistled under his breath. The kitchen sink was gurgling and leaking onto a towel someone had stuffed underneath. He knelt beside it and got to work, confident hands twisting valves and unscrewing fittings. He didn't hear her walk in. "Are you always this quiet when you work?" He startled, bumping his head on the counter. She laughed softly. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." He looked up and stared. The woman standing in front of him looked like she belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine. Long dark hair in a low bun, a white silk blouse tucked into high-waisted black trousers, and heels that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "I'm Grayson," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sink's almost done." "I'm Genevieve," she extended her hand. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." He shook it, feeling suddenly aware of the calluses on his fingers. "No problem, just a clogged pipe. Someone dumped too much rice down the drain." "That would be me," she admitted, laughing. "I tried to cook for once. It didn't go well." He smiled. "Stick to takeout." She tilted her head. "Do you always give cooking advice with your plumbing?" "Only when the sink tells me to." Genevieve laughed again, the kind of laugh that felt real, like she wasn't used to laughing at all. Something about her intrigued him. She was polished, sure, but there was something tired in her eyes, like she carried more than she let on. He finished the repair and stood, wiping his hands. "All done." "How much do I owe you?" He hesitated. "Let's call it 50. Her brow lifted. "You drove across the city, fixed a sink in a penthouse, and only want $50. He shrugged. "It's what I'd charge anyone." She walked to her purse and pulled out a crisp 100, pressing it into his palm. "Then consider this a tip." He hesitated, but she gave him a look that told him not to argue. "Thanks." You have a daughter, she said suddenly, nodding at the drawing that had fallen from his toolbox, a crayon sketch of a bunny and a girl holding hands with a stick figure labeled "My Dad." He scooped it up. Yeah, Kylie, she's 6, full of questions and glitter. Genevieve smiled, softer this time. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one, he said quietly. She makes everything worth it. There was a pause, a silence that didn't feel uncomfortable. Well, he said, forcing himself to move. If the sink gives you trouble again, just call. I will. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. You ever need someone to teach you how to cook rice properly? I'm available. She laughed again, and this time it reached her eyes. Noted. He left, thinking that Genevieve was the kind of woman a guy like him didn't get to meet twice. He pushed the thought away. She was probably married or dating some tech guy who drank green juice and ran marathons. But a week later, he got another call. Hi, it's Genevieve. My shower's acting up. The shower wasn't acting up, not really, but she smiled when he showed up with his toolbox anyway. Over the next few weeks, she found other things that needed fixing, a door that creaked, a light that flickered, a cabinet that stuck. And every time he came, not just for the money. Because Genevieve made coffee while he worked, she asked him about Kylie, she listened. And he found himself looking at her longer each time, wondering what a woman like her was doing alone in a place like that. What he didn't know, what she hadn't told him, was that Genevieve North wasn't just some woman living in a pretty condo. She was the CEO of Northbridge Enterprises. And she was falling for the man who fixed her sink. Grayson didn't know what to make of it the 4th time Genevieve called. Not because the issue wasn't real, her hallway light did flicker when he flipped the switch, but because by now, he'd memorized the route to her building, knew how the elevator paused just slightly before reaching the top floor, and recognized the scent of her place. Something subtle and expensive, like cedar and white tea. Still, it was the way she watched him work this time that made the air feel different. You always do that? She asked, leaning against the counter in a navy blouse with thin gold cuffs. Whistle while you work. He didn't look up from the wiring. Only when I'm nervous. You nervous? Her tone was teasing, but the curiosity beneath it was genuine. Electricity makes me cautious. One wrong wire and I'm a story on the evening news. Then why not hire someone else to do electrical jobs? He paused, then straightened. Because if I turned down every job I was afraid of, I'd be out of work. Genevieve studied him, her expression unreadable. You don't strike me as someone who lets fear stop him. He shrugged and grabbed the wire cutters. Fear's part of the job, you just learn to carry it. There was a silence that stretched, not uncomfortable but weighted. She broke it. I grew up in a house where nothing ever broke. My father used to say if something cracked, you replaced it. No questions, no repairs. Grayson tilted his head. Sounds like a lot of waste. It was, but it also meant nothing ever lasted long enough to matter. He looked at her then, not at her designer clothes or her polished poise, but at the quiet beneath her words. Maybe he just didn't know how to fix things. She blinked, and for a moment that polished exterior slipped. Maybe. He finished the wiring and flipped the switch. The light glowed steadily. No sparks, she said. No headlines, he replied. As he packed up his tools, she crossed the room and opened a cabinet. I have something for you. I didn't bring an invoice, he said. It's not payment. She returned with a small box and handed it to him. He looked at it, then her. What is it? Open it. Inside was a set of brand new precision tools. Chrome handles, neatly packed in foam. Nothing flashy, but high quality. Professional. I thought your current ones looked tired, she said. They've been with me a long time. I figured, but sometimes the right tools make all the difference. He hesitated. This is more than generous. I didn't do it to be generous. She stopped, searching for the right words. I respect what you do, and I thought you deserved better. He closed the box carefully. Thank you. She nodded, then added, You're probably wondering why I keep calling you for every minor issue. I figured you had a thing for broken appliances. That earned a quiet laugh, but her gaze didn't waver. I like talking to you. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, I like talking to you too. She stepped closer. Do you ever let someone buy you dinner? He met her eyes. Are you asking because you're hungry or because you want to know more about me? Both. He hesitated. I don't usually mix work with. I'm not offering you work, I'm offering you dinner. And I have a daughter who expects me home by 7. I'm not asking you to skip bedtime routines, just maybe lunch one day. He considered her, the openness in her tone, the way she didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. You're not what I expected when I walked in here the first time. And what did you expect? A client with a clogged sink. She smiled faintly, and now? He looked at her a moment longer. Someone who doesn't belong in a box. She stepped back, her expression unreadable again. Then don't put me in one. He left with the tool set under his arm, and her words still echoing in his ears. That night, after reading Kylie a story and tucking her in, he stood in the kitchen, staring at the closed box on the table. He ran his fingers over the smooth edges, then opened it again, the metal gleaming under the kitchen light. New tools? Miss Lillian asked from the doorway. She'd stopped by to drop off a container of soup she insisted he needed. He nodded, gift from a client. Must be some kind of client. Grayson didn't reply. He didn't know what Genevieve was yet. Every instinct told him not to get close. Their worlds didn't overlap. Her problems probably involved boardrooms and legal teams. His involved grocery bills and school permission slips. But her eyes lingered. Her words made him pause. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like just the guy with the wrench. He felt seen. And he didn't know what scared him more, the feeling itself or how much he wanted to feel it again. Grayson adjusted the collar of his only clean button-down shirt, the one he usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences or job interviews. He glanced at the clock on the wall just past noon and rubbed the back of his neck. Miss Lillian waved him out with a dish towel in her hand, already halfway through baking something that smelled like cinnamon and cloves. Kylie's helping me with the muffins. Go, she said, giving him a look that didn't allow for hesitation. He stepped into the hallway, took a breath, and headed for the elevator. Genevieve had suggested lunch at a small bistro tucked behind a bookstore just off the main square. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, and it definitely wasn't where he expected someone like her to suggest for a first date. But she'd leaned across the penthouse counter the day before and said, There's a booth by the window that catches the sun. You'll like it, like she already knew he would. She was already there when he arrived, seated with a glass of iced tea and her hair down for the first time. He slowed as he approached, taking in the way sunlight filtered through the glass and caught the edges of her lashes, the soft curve of her mouth. She looked different without heels or tailored clothes, more grounded, more real. You came, she said, setting down her glass. You sounded pretty sure I would. I was hopeful, she said, and motioned to the seat across from her. I ordered you the roast beef sandwich. The menu said it comes with horseradish. I'm taking a risk. He chuckled, sliding into the booth. Bold choice. I've been told I need to take more of those. The meal arrived quickly, the kind of hearty fare Grayson hadn't had in weeks, and they ate with a rhythm that surprised him. No awkward pauses, no strained silences. Just the clink of utensils and the occasional lift of her brow when he said something that caught her off guard. "So," she said between bites, "what did you want to be before you became a fix-it-all?" He wiped his hands on a napkin. "A mechanic. I liked engines, still do, but then Kylie happened and I needed something more flexible, something that paid fast." Genevieve didn't offer pity. Her expression stayed neutral, listening instead of reacting. "And you," he asked, "what did you want before all this?" She swirled the ice in her glass. "I wanted to teach art, but my father ran an empire, and when he died, I was the only one left who understood the structure well enough to hold it together." "You sound like you didn't want it." "I didn't, at first." She looked out the window. "But then I realized I could change things. I didn't have to run it the way he did. I could build something better." Grayson leaned back in his seat, watching her. "That's not something most people in your position would admit." "I'm not most people." "No," he said quietly, "you're not." They left the restaurant without touching on what this was or what it could be. But when she brushed his hand as they walked past the flower stall outside, he didn't pull away. That evening, after returning home, he found Kylie curled up on the couch with a muffin in one hand and a crayon in the other. "Miss Lillian let me draw with the good markers," she said proudly. "Did she now?" Grayson sat beside her, ruffling her curls. "I made this for you." She handed him a folded sheet of paper. Inside was a drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall, one shorter, and one very small with a bow in her hair. Above them, in colorful letters, "Our family." "Who's this?" he asked, pointing at the tall woman holding the little girl's hand. "Kylie's new friend," she whispered. "She likes you." Grayson stared at the page for a long moment before folding it carefully and slipping it into his wallet. The next day, he was back at the hardware store, stocking shelves and answering questions about pipe fittings. His phone buzzed around 3, and he stepped outside to take the call. "I have a problem," Genevieve said without preamble. "Another leak." "No, something worse." He frowned. "What's going on?" "My board found out I've been distracted. They think I'm hiding something, that I'm fraternizing with someone below my pay grade." He leaned against the brick wall outside the store. "Are you?" She hesitated. "Does it feel like that to you?" "No," he said. "It feels like something real." "That's what I told them." He stared out at the traffic crawling past. "What do they want you to do?" "Distance myself, prove it's nothing." "Is that what it is?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I don't want it to be." Grayson took a breath. "Then don't let them decide for you." "I won't, but I need to show them this isn't a secret, that I'm not ashamed of it." "What are you saying?" "I want you to come with me to the Northbridge gala this Friday, as my guest." Grayson blinked. "You mean the one with tuxedos and cameras and billionaires?" "Yes." "I fix faucets, Genevieve. And I run a company. Doesn't mean we don't belong in the same room." He rubbed his jaw, thinking, "I don't own a suit." "You will by Friday." He laughed despite himself. "You're serious." "I am." He hesitated. "All right, but I'm not wearing one of those necktie things that choke you." "Deal." When he hung up, he stood there for a long time, the hum of the city around him suddenly distant. He was going to a billionaire's gala. With the woman who used to call him just to fix her sink. And somehow, he wasn't afraid of what came next. Not anymore. Grayson stood in front of the full-length mirror, staring at a man he barely recognized. The tuxedo fit him like it had been made for someone else because it had. Genevieve's assistant had dropped it off earlier that day, along with polished shoes, cufflinks, and a handwritten note that simply read, "Don't worry about the tie, just be you." He adjusted the lapels again, unsure what to do with his hands. Miss Lillian peeked in from the hallway, wiping her palms on her apron. "You look like you belong on one of those magazine covers, in the grocery store checkout aisle." He gave her a crooked smile. "Just hope I remember which fork to use." "Kylie's been practicing her curtsy all afternoon," she added. "She wants to show Genevieve when she gets back." Grayson felt something shift in his chest. "You think this is a mistake?" Miss Lillian stepped into the room, her gaze gentle but steady. "No, I think it's about time someone saw you the way your daughter always has." A black car arrived just before 7. The driver opened the door, and Grayson climbed in, knees brushing the soft leather, heart thudding harder than it had any right to. The city blurred past outside the window, and when the car pulled up to the towering event venue, he could already hear the hum of conversation and camera flashes beyond the velvet ropes. Genevieve met him just past the entrance, standing beneath a chandelier the size of a small car. She wore a floor-length navy gown with a gold clasp at the shoulder, her hair in soft waves. Her expression was unreadable for a moment as she looked him over, then her lips parted. "You clean up devastatingly well." He stepped closer. "I think I'm supposed to say something about how you stop the room, but can't remember any words right now." She laughed, the sound low and intimate. "Then don't say anything, just stand next to me." They stepped into the ballroom together, and the shift was immediate. Heads turned. Conversations paused. A few whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. But Genevieve didn't falter. She walked with her hand resting on his arm like it belonged there. One of the board members approached a sharp-jawed woman in a silver suit. "Genevieve, I see your +1 has arrived." Grayson didn't flinch, though he recognized the tone. He'd heard it before on job sites, in banks, from teachers who pretended not to judge. Genevieve smiled calmly. "Yes, Grayson Scott, he's a contractor, and also the man I'm seeing." The woman arched an eyebrow. "Interesting choice." Genevieve didn't blink. "It's not a choice, it's a certainty." They moved on before the woman could reply, and Grayson let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You didn't have to defend me," he said under his breath. "I wasn't defending you," she replied. "I was stating facts." The gala unfolded around them like a scene from a dream. Waiters in white jackets passed crystal flutes of champagne. A string quartet played in the corner. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos circled like planets in orbit around themselves. And through it all, Genevieve kept him close. Near the center of the room, a large screen lit up, and a hostess took the stage to begin announcing awards. Genevieve leaned over. "There's a dinner next, then speeches, then we can sneak out." "You're the guest of honor," he said. "I'd rather be somewhere. Can watch your daughter's crayon masterpieces dry on the fridge." He stared at her stunned. "You mean that?" She met his eyes fully. "I don't say things I don't mean." Later, as guests filtered to their tables, Grayson followed Genevieve to the edge of the ballroom. She took his hand, led him down a side hallway, and into a quiet, glass-walled terrace that overlooked the skyline. The city glittered below them like a spilled jewelry box. He turned toward her, his voice low. "You brought me here to prove a point." She shook her head. "I brought you here because I wanted you to see what I see." He frowned slightly. "And what's that?" "That you belong in any room you walk into. Not because of a suit or a title, but because of who you are." He swallowed hard. "You're not afraid of what they'll think." "I'm afraid of a lot of things," she admitted. "But losing you, that scares me more." He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "I'm not good at all this." "Neither am I," she said, "but I'm good at knowing when something's worth it." The door opened behind them. It was her assistant, breathless. "Genevieve, you're being called to the stage." Genevieve looked at Grayson for a long moment, then turned back to her assistant. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." The woman hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. "I have to go," she said quietly, "but I need you to know something before I do." He waited. "I've spent years building something I thought would protect me. Money, status, control, but none of it ever made me feel safe. Not until I met you." He reached for her hand. "You make me want more, not money, not status, just this, you, a life that feels like it matters." She nodded once, like she'd been waiting to hear that, and turned to go. He watched her disappear into the ballroom. 2 days later, Genevieve stood at Grayson's front door, wearing jeans, a soft sweater, and no makeup. Kylie opened the door first, then squealed and ran to the kitchen to show off a new drawing. Grayson appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a towel. "Didn't expect you today." "I had a board meeting this morning," she said. "And I told them I was stepping back, not quitting, just making space." He stared at her. "Space for what?" "For us." He stepped onto the porch. "You sure?" "Completely." Inside, Kylie was already setting out cookies. Genevieve glanced past Grayson, then looked up at him again. "I want a life with you, Grayson, not in secret, not as a distraction, as everything." He didn't answer with words. He just reached for her, pulled her into an embrace that felt like home. Kylie's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Are you guys kissing or what?" Genevieve laughed, tucked into his arms. "Not yet." Grayson leaned down and whispered, "We've got time." And just like that, they stepped inside. Together. Rain pattered softly against the windows of Grayson's apartment as he stood in the kitchen, carefully packing Kylie's lunch for school. The apartment had changed in small but unmistakable ways over the past 2 weeks. Genevieve's favorite tea now sat beside the instant coffee. A silk scarf hung from the coat rack where Kylie had insisted it belonged, and a framed photo of the 3 of them at the park rested on the shelf above the fireplace. Grayson glanced over at the living room, where Kylie was finishing her reading log beside Genevieve, who was helping her sound out unfamiliar words. A stack of legal folders sat untouched at Genevieve's feet. She hadn't mentioned work once all weekend. "You two ready for drop-off?" he asked, tucking the lunchbox into Kylie's backpack. Genevieve looked up. "She just finished the last page, and I promised we'd stop for banana bread on the way." "You're spoiling her," he said, handing over the backpack. "I'm practicing," she replied, rising to her feet, "for a life that includes her." Grayson didn't say anything, just watched them walk out together, Kylie's hand tucked into Genevieve's. Later that morning, he pulled up outside a small lot on the edge of town, stepping out of his truck and staring at the weathered building with a crooked, "For lease," sign in the window. The property manager met him at the front, keys in hand. "It's been empty for a year," the man said. "Needs work." Grayson opened the door and stepped inside. Dust coated the counters, and the walls were beige from age, but the space was open and filled with potential. He ran a hand along the edge of the workbench that had once been part of a mechanic's garage. His gut told him what it always had when something needed fixing. This could be something. By the time he returned home, Genevieve was back on the couch, thumbing through notes scribbled in red ink. "Did she get to school all right?" he asked, setting his keys on the table. "She insisted on carrying her umbrella even though we barely got a drizzle." Genevieve smiled, then set the papers aside. "Where were you?" "Looking at something," he paused, "a space to open my own shop." She sat forward. "You're serious?" "Yeah, I've been saving for years. Thought I'd need more time, but the gala, the way people looked at me like I didn't belong, it made me realize I've been waiting for permission to want more. I don't want to just fix things. I want to build something for Kylie, something that's ours." Genevieve stood and walked over to him. Then let's do it. He raised an eyebrow. Let's. I've been thinking about what comes next for me too, she said, resting a hand on his chest. I don't want to run a company that takes everything from me. I want to invest in something that gives back, something real. You'd partner with me. No, I'd back you, quietly if that's what you want. But I believe in you, Grayson. He hesitated. I don't want you to do it because you feel responsible for me. She leaned in. I'm doing it because I love you. The words hung between them, solid and certain. I love you too, he said, his voice low. Didn't know I could love someone like this, someone who walks into my world and makes it feel bigger. She leaned her forehead against his. Then let's build something that lasts. Over the following months, things moved quickly. The garage was renovated from the ground up, new wiring, fresh paint, and a handmade wooden sign that read Scott & Co., Custom Repairs. Genevieve's name wasn't on the lease, but she was there every step of the way, organizing permits, helping design the logo, and convincing a local paper to do a feature on the grand opening. Kylie helped paint the door a bright blue and insisted on a corner of the office for her art, which now included a growing collection of stick figure family portraits, always with the same 3 people. At the opening, neighbors, local business owners, and even a few of Genevieve's former board members showed up. Grayson stood in the center of the garage in his best shirt, not a tux, just something clean and pressed, and gave a short speech about second chances, hard work, and building a life worth coming home to. Afterward, Genevieve pulled him aside behind the building, where string lights had been hung across the back lot for a small after-party. You know, she said, sipping from a paper cup of cider, I've been offered 3 consulting jobs in the past month. He tilted his head. You thinking about taking one? Not yet. I like being here, with you, with Kylie. I like waking up and knowing I'm not chasing anything anymore. He reached for her hand. You're the bravest person I know. She smiled. You gave me something worth being brave for. They danced slowly beneath the lights, no music except the laughter from inside and the hum of the warm spring night. Kylie ran past them with a sparkler in each hand, screaming with joy as Miss Lillian chased after her, warning about fire hazards. Grayson looked down at the woman in his arms. You happy? I'm exactly where I want to be, she said. He kissed her, not like the first time, tentative and unsure, but like someone who finally understood what it meant to be chosen, to be seen, to be loved without terms. They didn't need grand declarations anymore. The life they were building was the declaration. And when they walked back inside together, hand in hand, the crowd parted. Not because of who she was, not because of who he'd become, but because everyone could see, in the way they looked at each other, that this messy, unexpected, perfect life was exactly where they belonged. Forever.